It's Monday, August 26th. Holy cow, the time goes by. And I'm Rob, that developer dad. And last week, towards the end of the week, we made some major breakthroughs on getting the application's positioning for all the stuff working right. And we started playing around with some more advanced CSS stuff. And I'm gonna set that aside this morning because I think it's time to start talking about deploying this thing to Azure. And for that, we're actually going to use PowerPoint because it's the tool that I use for quick design sketching and iteration, and it involves a lot less goofing around with connectors and screen positions and all of that stuff. I can slap something together very, very quickly just to get my ideas out. And it's a whole lot easier for me to talk through my thought process while designing with a application that is easier to get around. It may not make as pretty a design or as professional a diagram or whatever, but for these purposes, I don't care. So I'm going to pop over to the main screen. Main screen, turn on. What you say? I say we need a shape. And we need a square. We're going to put it at the top. There we go. And we're going to paint it black. And our text color is going to be white. Let's get some titanium white. Edit my text. And it is going to be cloud deployment diagram, Azure. And I guess I have to come over here so that I can access the text stuff. I'm going to go to the home of that line. We're going to bold it. I said we're going to bold it. All right, so everything in Azure is based on a tenant. So there's a hierarchy of things in Azure. We've got at the outermost layer and I'm going to change this color to a nice Azure blue. Actually, let's go with a more primary blue. There we go. I like that. And come back over here because I don't know why they like to. Nope. Where's the vertical? What's it? Top. Edit my text. MSFT. Azure. Azure is this global thing. They've got servers all over the planet, and it's basically going to be running my code on somebody else's computer, and that somebody else is Microsoft. So inside Azure, we've got all these services and so on, and pieces and parts and big honking things, Azure services that we can basically pick and choose from and organize into our tenant. And we can basically rent those services, those pre-configured services from Microsoft, usually for much cheaper than we can run them ourselves, with a caveat that it's cheaper until you reach a certain point of scale, at which point it might actually make more sense to actually run your own hardware in your own data center with your own employees. However, I am one person with no income, and this application is making me $0. So I can't afford my own hardware or my own data center or my own 24/7 operations employees to be able to run all of the stuff that this thing is going to need. Not to mention, in this application's case, I would need to be able to host, run, and operate a large language model. And that's not cheap, let's say. If I were a billionaire, I'd consider building a data center with my servers and a bunch of solar panels and windmills on top. Sorry, birds. Although that's a myth. To offset my pull from the grid and so on and so forth. But I am not a billionaire. So I'm going to rent somebody else's machine. And luckily, Azure or Microsoft has a number of free service tiers. And I'm going to lean on those heavily while we do this. So within Azure, we have a tenant, I believe it's called. And I should really review. It's been a while since I've done this stuff. Edge. And where's Copilot? It's been a while since I've thought and operated along these lines. So I'm going to ask Microsoft's Copilot. Within Azure, what is the organizational hierarchy most commonly used in a well-architected framework? I remember the concepts, I just don't remember the exact terms, and they matter. No. I was thinking more concrete than that. I'm asking about the organizational hierarchy of things like management groups, tenants, subscriptions, resource groups, etc. Okay, certainly. So management groups let me manage. Let's scroll up here. Management groups allow access, policies, compliance across multiple subscriptions. I don't think I need to worry about management groups at this point. That's more for a large enterprise or a large corporation that would have, say, a management group set aside for the development lab, a management group set aside for the public-facing products, management group for their ActiveDirectory and M365 and Exchange and all of that stuff, a group for finance, and so on and so forth. It's really just a way to kind of create a grouping of Azure resources that would align with, say, the company's organization chart. Subscriptions associate user accounts with the resources that we create. Each subscription has limits on the resources it can use. Organizations use subscriptions to manage costs and resources created by teams and projects. Okay, so subscriptions are essentially your ongoing shopping cart, so to speak. And you can set, or you can designate types of resources that can be created within a subscription. So you can set a policy over the development lab subscription that says, okay, you guys go ahead and create whatever resources you want, but you're going to have a monthly spending limit. And none of your subscriptions can be this. Script Kiddo, how's it going, man? I'm not going to let you have an AI subscription or what have you. Resource groups, of course, logical containers where we deploy and manage Azure resources. I'm much more familiar with those because I've been mostly operating at the concrete, where do I put my code level when it comes to this stuff. And of course, resources are the specific services. So within Azure, we've got our management groups. I'm not going to worry about those here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a subscription. And we're going to shade this a very pale blue. And I'm going to edit my text, but I need my text fill to be black because I'm on a pale background. Azure subscription. And I want to push this up to the top. Where you go? Here, text direction, top, right. And we'll go here and we'll bold that. And then within the subscription, because this is where we're going to be primarily operating, I have so many rewards. Oh, in Bing? Yeah, I don't even look at that more often than not. I don't even know what those are for, man. Okay, so we're going to need some resources. And I'm just going to use shapes for these. I'm just going to use little shapes. Here we go. I'm going to edit the text on this. App service. I need a SQL Server. I'm going to need Azure OpenAI. And those are the basic things that I need to make the app do the thing. Now, I don't want to put those in the same resource group as this. So let's make another shape. Yep, we're going to use another rectangle. For this, we're going to color it a slightly darker blue. And we're going to edit the text with black and private resources. I'm going to move you over here. Move this here. Public resources go there. And I'm going to take both of these. And yep, you guessed it. Where's my text direction? Is this it? Nope. And we're going to boop those over to the right. Excuse me. Now, Azure OpenAI. Oh, yep. All right. So these guys, because I added them first, let's bring these happy little guys to the front. So we've got Azure OpenAI here. And we've got SQL Server over here. And then we've got my app service right here. And I don't want to be too much of a stickler on centering these things and all that crap. And of course, Azure App Service needs to talk to the OpenAI service. and the app service needs to talk to SQL Server. Now, you might think that this is enough, but it's not, because I don't want to roll my own identity management stuff. So that means I need, and this is where I start to get a little fuzzy on the details, because I've never set this kind of stuff up by myself, by hand. Let's group these. Here we go. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to shrink you. Oh, come here. And I'm going to shrink this guy. You and you come with me. That'll do. You two, come here. Just you and you. Scoot you over here like so. And then just the box, shrink it down. Now, I'm going to need another Azure subscription, I think. That's all going to be under my main tenant. What am I doing? Well, so I've built an application that lets me very quickly generate non-player characters in let me check this in real quick. I'll show you. It helps me quickly generate non-player characters, mostly focused on townsfolk. Oh, yes, I'm making a PowerPoint presentation, not to present to anybody. I'm using PowerPoint for my diagramming while I think through all of the things I need to do and all of the things I need to stand up in order to push that application up to the cloud. And we can delete that. Delete that. What am I up to right now, Aku Chubby Bean? I am designing the Azure deployment, or I'm sketching out the resources that I believe I need to be able to deploy the application that I'm building to Microsoft Azure. I can delete that one. And this guy, now, I don't know if Azure AD B2C, Azure AD B2C. Oh, the app that I'm planning to build, I was just describing that, and in answer to, or in a answer to Script Kiddo's question that I misunderstood. They had asked me, what am I doing right now? And I went off on my typical, oh gosh, what am I doing? We need this and this and this, and we got to group those guys. Ungroup, group, there we go. And we pull that over here. So what am I building is an application that's going to help me when I'm running my in-person Dungeons and Dragons games, and the players run into, say, a shopkeeper or somebody who's bringing their food and ale at the tavern, and they want more details about the people that they're interacting with. And I and several other dungeon masters that I know um, are not really fantastic at coming up with engaging descriptions and details about these sort of walk-on commoner NPCs on the fly. So I end up with a lot of merchants named Bob and a lot of tavern servers named, I don't know, Mad Mary or whatever. And it gets repetitive and it kind of knocks me out of the flow of the game. So what I've built, and I'll bring that up here, I'm going to flip over to the main branch. Here we go. The branch that I was on was me jamming on CSS stuff, and you can actually see that there's still styles and so on and so forth up there. But what this application does is local LM running. It doesn't look like it is. Let's run in here. Oof, I lost some styles. That's okay. I'm not that concerned. So I've pre-generated all these guys. You can see that the appearance, their name, personality, they've all got that little AI in parentheses next to them. I had a language model actually create those descriptions and everything like that for me. So I could go back to the list and let's open up local LM, or LM Studio rather, because it looks like it has shut itself down on me. And I'm using this here, Chubby Bean, because while I'm doing the research and development on this, I don't want to pay a cloud provider for language model access. So Microsoft's released an open source small language model called Phi3 Mini, and I can actually run that on my laptop sitting next to me here. So I've loaded that up. I can come into Create, and let's say I know they're a dwarf, and I know they're a, you know what? Let's go with stereotypes. They're a blacksmith. They're not retired. So we can generate, and we've got a lady dwarf with a deep tan complexion, braided brown hair. They're a blacksmith. They grew up as an acolyte. Now, that's a good start. And these attributes here that you see on screen are all done basically by rolling dice in the background. I've got like a list of the species. If I didn't know it was going to be a dwarf, then I would have said just random. I knew I wanted a dwarf blacksmith. Leave everything else up to chance. It randomly calculates the height and weight, the age based off of parameters that I've defined per species. And it basically just does a bunch of dice rolling in the background to get me to here. And then to get a lot more color, or a little more color, I push the AI button. And it's just received, or it's just starting to spin up the prompt processing now. Dwarves are fun. Hey, Algrave, how's it going? Algrave is one of those players that's asking me questions like, so what color hair do they have? And what's their name? Algrave is not, well, no. Algrave is worse than my wife. My wife is the one who is the player who writes down all those details so that when I inevitably forget, she's got my back. or can call me on my BS when I make up new details that didn't exist, or, okay, so you're at the metal shop. Okay, so you're talking to Grog. No, no. Bob runs the metal shop. And it looks like it did some stuff, but it didn't quite spin up right. It happens. Yeah, that got goofy. Let's go back to the list. We'll create another one. We'll just go full random here. We've got a Dragonborn Mason, grew up as a guild artisan. Oops, lost that one. I liked that one. Dwarven Weaver. Sure, we'll generate. And we'll see if the language model actually replies to me this time. And yeah, this is currently not in wonderful visual shape or anything like that. It's okay-ish, but I've got a lot more work that I want to do on the styling. I obviously blew something up out here over the past couple of working days on it. But I'm going to get this stuff restored, and then I'm actually going to push this up to the web through this week. And then I'm going to have it hidden, but it's going to be operable for me, running mostly under free resources. And it's going to let me show it off to some people. Here we go. We've got Balin Ironbelly. He's 213 years old. He's retired from active weaving, but occasionally takes jobs as an underground merchant, leveraging his own contacts, and so on. So yeah, let's save this guy. He might be handy. We can go back to the list, and there's Balin Ironbelly. Here's another one that we generated earlier last week, and so on. So yeah, that's what I'm building, Aku, or that's what I've built. And now I'm thinking about how to push this up to the web and keep it secure. So I feel like I'm going to have to put the Active Directory B2C, and B2C stands for business to customer. And I'm going to use this to control access to this. And let's talk a little bit about how these resources are going to talk to each other. So Azure AD B2C, and let's drop a thing there. No, let's not. Let's talk about what these different resources do. So we'll pull this over here and give me a text box. And I'm going to put it right here. Flurp. There we go. Happy little text box. And black text ain't gonna cut it. That ain't it. Let's go with, let's bring back some titanium white. So, Azure AD B2C is a version of Active Directory, now called Entra, that manages identities. Can I spell and type? people, services, resources, etc. App service hosts custom code. It is only one of many choices for this, but it's the simplest. Azure OpenAI provides hosted language models. SQL Server serves SQL. Pretty simple. And I actually want to boop that font size down. Let's take it to 14. There we go. And so that's how we're going to organize things. Now, my app service, let's add another happy little text box here. Will run as a managed identity so that I don't have to store passwords or keys next to the application. And let's pop that, and we'll shrink this down to a 12-point font. And these guys just run as they are. These guys, and let's pull you up here, and I'll pull this up so that I've got a little bit more space for my text, because I want to make that a little bit bigger because that's almost illegible. Let's go to a 14. Here we go. And let's do this. Will talk to only certain identities, me and my app service. Control C, V, zoop. Let's just grab another text box and we'll run it over here. And 14 establishes and manages the identities for my apps and my users. Azure App Layout. Save. Okay, now I've got some questions about some of these details. I already know that I can use Azure AD B2C to create a managed identity. And let's put a space in between managed and identity there. To create a managed identity for my app service. I also know that I can put that managed identity into what's called a Azure group. And an Azure group is really just a combination of users or identities. I don't want to use the word user because that usually means humans. Identities is sort of the Venn diagram. Let's draw a Venn diagram. Delete. Delete. Give me a big honking circle. Here we go. And edit the text. Identities. And I want to push that up to the top of my circle. Nope. Yup. There we go. Identities. All right. And then within identities, I need a different color for that. Let's go with green. And we'll get another circle. And let's go with orange. And edit the text. Text fill will be black. People. And in here, edit text. Boop. Apps. And services. And I need to shrinkify that. There we go. So we've got people, apps, and services. Those are our two main kinds of identities. And then, of course, within apps and services, we've got a number of other ways of creating those identities. We could do an app registration so that an external API, or if I'm hosting an API, so there's a differentiation here. So apps and services have identities, but they also require things like registrations and so on. Those all go into AD. Now, a group combines and we'll edit our text. Groups. And we'll send this label to the top. Here we go. And let's make this a little less pale, a little less dark. Edit text. Have 0 to n identities. And we better make that text black. And then I'm going to grab this, paste it. Have 0 to n access permissions. So let's say I create a group called that developer dad's applications. Now, it's not necessarily what I would call the group, but let's just say I would add the D&D app to the developer dad's applications, and then only members of developer dad's applications will be allowed to even see or access these resources in this, or the resources in this resource group. I'm probably not going to try to make these invisible at this point in time, simply because I don't want to get into things like private endpoints and so on and so forth. That is a security step that I'm going to want to take in the near future, but that kind of thing does come with additional cost, as I understand it. Now, I might need a web app firewall. So that'd live in my public resources. So let's take this fella and we'll just shrinky dinky do him down here. And we'll do this. Web app firewall. And I need to look and see if there's a free grant for that, so that I can do things like prevent distributed denial of service attacks, keep people from hacking through to these back-end services, so on and so forth. But what I could do is at the resource group level here, the private resources, I can say the only people that can access resources in this group, in this resource group, are people who are members of developer dad's applications. And of course, I would put myself as an end user into that same group, because a group has 0 to N identities. My applications will all have identities, and I'll have my own identity. In fact, I may even set up several identities for me. One as a sysadmin, an identity for me when I'm acting as a developer, an identity for me when I'm acting as a human, or just a regular non-organizational user. And the free version of Azure B2C allows up to 50,000 objects. And then after that, I believe it's 50,000 monthly active users. And then beyond that, it's very, very inexpensive for each additional active user. So I'll be using that, obviously. And so I'll have free reign when I'm acting as a sysadmin or a developer to the resources that live inside this private resources group. But nobody else will. In fact, none of the customers, if I were to obtain any customers, would have direct access to my OpenAI or my SQL server. They would have to go through this app service and only use the guided paths to those services. Hopefully they aren't even aware that they're using them, to get to those backing services. And this web app firewall, I'm not certain that I absolutely need it. So what I want to do is I'm going to fade that. And I'm going to take my text and I'm going to make it gray so that it's got a real low contrast. There we go. And let's even do the outline color. We'll go gray. And I want to make it as dashes. And so that's sort of what we want to do with deploying this application. Now, this afternoon, we're getting close to the end of our time this morning. This afternoon, I do want to, I'll fix up my color schemes and CSS and everything like that. I'll get this thing shipshape between now and this afternoon, because I don't want to deploy while it's looking like this. So I'll get this fixed up considerably. I'm not going to make it super fancy. I'm just going to make it look a little better than it does now, as well as setting up the basic subscriptions and so on. I'm going to do those things off screen, because I believe I have to put, for the pay-as-you-go stuff, I got to do things like put in credit card numbers and do logins and create client secrets and all that stuff. I'm going to do that off screen, because I don't want to accidentally reveal actual real sensitive information to the world, because the internet's forever. But when I do get back online, I intend to have this looking marginally better. So this stuff, I want it to be looking, oh goodness. Ha! Oops. I want to have this stuff looking marginally better. And then I'm going to have some basic Azure stuff set up here. And if my wife is watching, and I think she is, she may have gone off by now. I will be putting spending limits on these resources so that if those spending limits are exceeded, um, it'll just stop working in Azure. So we won't go broke. Um, so until this afternoon, I'm going to cut this morning a little bit short because I've talked about what I wanted to talk about, and my morning coffees are coming back to me. I'm sure you can see how I'm kind of wiggling and fidgeting a bit. So um, I'll be back around 1 o'clock p.m. And until then, get yourself some lunch, eat some delicious food, or at least some food that will fuel your brain. Drink some water, touch some grass if you can, and I'll see you all again at 1 p.m. Hopefully, if you have time. Take care, folks.